It's time to get into the more, how would I say it? The more cancelable stuff now.
Okay.
Um, you ready for the social issue?
Yeah, this is where again, I always preface this by saying that I am a social conservative. I'm not like hardcore social conservative, but I think I lean more towards social conservatism rather than, socially liberal. So that's why these hot takes on social issues you know, might be a little
Yeah,
problematic. But yeah, I'll continue.
yeah, yeah. I can say the same thing because I'm like a social centrist in a way. But when we take a look at police issues such as corruption within the police force,
hmm
people complaining about epistemic racism when it comes to the police, what do you have to say when it comes to the rioters or statistically the three people that get killed, black people that get killed every year by the police?
Um, So I guess I'll address one topic at a time. So when it comes to police
Yeah,
corruption, is there corruption in the police departments? Of course. But when it really comes down to it, there's probably corruption in any power dynamic of society. So like government wise, any company wise, there is going to be some form of corruption. We're trying to limit that to zero, well, trying to limit it as far as we can to zero, but it'll never be absolute zero. So definitely agree that there is corruption in police departments. When it comes to like the rioters and stuff, obviously, I've never agreed with any of the riots that have happened over the past couple of years, or well, really, I don't believe in like riots whatsoever because it doesn't seem to solve much. It seems to only damage property and damage the economy, damage the neighborhoods around that area. So when it comes to like police dealing with rioters, I think that they should use force that seems necessary. So if the rioters are violent, they're going to use violent force. But if the rioters are sort of like not as violent, they just seem to be like combative. Well, you can use non-violent tactics as well, like pepper spray or a taser. But I guess when it comes to like black people and police, obviously you touched on that. I definitely think that there's a bend towards like, black people being dealt with police like differently. And I think it really comes down to like again, historics of redlining where black neighborhoods were sectioned off from certain parts of the cities, so they were just growing up by themselves in these black neighborhoods, and these were poor, underfunded neighborhoods that the police could target, and they know they could target, and they still probably target to this day. And I think that's where a lot of the negative interactions from black people and police come from.
yeah, I would definitely agree with that take. Especially, I've seen some interesting things. I know there's like definitely some racist individuals, but with any
Of
system
course.
of power, there's always going to be a few racist people within it. Um,
hmm
and when it comes to, I guess, eliminating racism, we won't ever be able to accomplish that because at the end of the day, humans are tribalistic in nature, and if we won't be discriminating by skin, we will be doing it by some other nuanced trait, like, oh, their ideology is different from mine, or their culture is different from mine, so I'm just gonna bag on them for it.
Yeah, I understand that. Racism will never be zero. I think it'll always be on an individual level. People will be racist, but I think we can weed it out of like institutions or power or anything like that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Um, I don't know how you would do that, like maybe a test or something, but I don't know how you would go about making that kind of test.
I mean, I think you can discover, like certain things if they're doing, like certain little actions or behaviors if they're racist or not. I don't know if you could tell if people are truly racist. There might be a test for that. But I have no idea. I wouldn't know. I'm not a social psychologist.
Yeah, I mean, all I understand on that front is we all have like some form of biases to other groups, subconsciously speaking, but like sometimes it just gets out of hand with per se a racist person. Um,
Yeah. We don't want those racist individuals being in any sort of like power, right? That's what we want to get rid of.
Hitler, cough, cough.
True. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of me and Playmer here agree on most topics. Now let's dive into the one we kind of been arguing about for like some time.
Okay.
What do you think about so you said you're a social conservative.
Yep.
Um, so when it comes to the red pills and how liberals are doing the takes on the red pill community
Yeah.
and I'd say feminism in general, what would you think?
Um, so when it comes to like red pill ideology, it's basically all revolves around self-improvement, right? So when it comes to like their fundamental beliefs, and I'm talking purely fundamental, which is like you're improving your wealth, as in like having a stable job, maybe improving your job so you have like a stable wealth, improving yourself, like health wise, when it comes to like working out, eating right, not doing drugs. This is something that red pill people preach a lot. And then it obviously, the third one is like socializing, having friend groups, talking to women. And that's ultimately going to be able to get you into a relationship where if you're in a lot of social circles, you're eventually going to find a woman who's interested in you just by proxy. So when it comes to like their base fundamental beliefs, I totally agree with Red Pill community. I think they have a lot of value. Obviously, me and you have both debated on that a lot, but you seem to disagree with me on the Red Pill community. Is that correct?
Yeah, for me personally, it's more of a how would I put this? I don't think a dictionary can really define a movement when it comes to the core fundamental beliefs, because at the core there'll be the core belief system, and a person following the core belief system is, in my opinion, a totally different group compared to the radical side. And I believe that the radicals in any group have to be pushed aside, and for the real people that believe in that certain ideology to be brought more to light, I guess. As I'm saying, we shouldn't give the vocal minority the loaded gun.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why I don't really like putting any core. Um, that's why I don't like siding with any movement or
Hmm.
giving myself a label when it comes to my social takes, because that's always an ever evolving course when it comes to movements.
Well, yeah.
One day you can, side with feminism, right? And then the next day you get fourth way feminism, which gives you the dumbest takes in the world. Um,
Well, exactly. That's why I've never said I'm a part of the red pill community. I don't like to say labels because I don't think they mean a whole lot because they constantly change. Do I agree with self-improvement? Yeah. But do I agree with like the red pill community like 5 years ago and 5 years in the future? Well, I don't even know. So that's why I don't use labels to describe myself. Like I always explain what I actually believe. This is kind of like goes back to the why I'm writing this my positions document, but I'll never just say like, "Oh, I'm this," because that doesn't really convey a lot of information.
well, yeah, that's true, but like, yeah, that's why I'm always skeptical of movements in and of themselves, because one day they'll be professing to believe one thing, and the next they'll be somewhat stabbing themselves in the back and going with a different view of the world for a furthering their agenda. Um, I don't know. This is the pattern I've seen with some of the more social movements that want to provide social change.
Hmm. I mean, what it really comes down to, like the red pill and the feminism, I think the red pill, the reason it's got so big in the past like year or two is like the pushback between how overstepped feminism has got. So it's like you're saying the fourth wave feminism has got really far. I think that that red pill community, why it's gotten so big, it's that pushback towards it. So it's like people pushing back towards this like social liberalism because I honestly think that's, if you just look 10 years ago, we were pretty socially conservative in the United States. Like, not a lot of people even knew what a transgender person was. But now, in like 2022, we're now saying that, like, oh, yeah, transgender women can compete in women's sports, which that's a whole nother issue. So I think we've made a
Yeah,
lot of strides in the past 10 years, but I think the reason the red pill community's got so big is because of that pushback.
yeah, I would say so myself too. But like, I don't know, I'm always I don't know, I hate having to put myself inside a camp when I'm unsure of what their views are going to be tomorrow.
Hmm.
But at the core, I do agree with some of the stuff that the red pill says, and with the dictionary definition of feminism, I agree with that.
Yep.
I don't, I don't, I guess you can say I don't really agree with the movements as a whole and the way they're run.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
Obviously. Because you have the radical individuals that those are the people that you see online saying some crazy stuff, and then the community as a whole is like tarnished by it.
precisely. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So in that respect, me and you both agree on it. Um,
Yeah.
so when it comes to hang on, this is an interesting topic that I've like been dipping my toes into.
Another
So what do you
social
think
issue.
about? Well, yeah, yeah. What do
Okay.
you think about transgender males going into women's sports?
You mean transgender females?
Yeah, yeah. Or
Okay.
what once was a biological male going into a biologically female sport.
Um, so again, I'm not a doctor. So again, my take might be ignorant. But from what I would say is that with careful consideration, in some cases, I can see transgender females playing in women's sports. So, for instance, when it comes to like a not physical sport, or when it comes to a sport that there's not a big difference between males and females, then I would definitely say, like, okay, that seems to be the case. But when it comes to like most sports that are physical and there are differences between men and women, that's when I would have a little bit of pushback to where it's like, okay, this doesn't seem to be like correct, right? What you're not gonna do is take Usain Bolt and then like, you know, suppress his testosterone and say like, okay, well now you're gonna run with the women. He's obviously gonna still win. So I think that's what it really comes down to with me when it comes to like if there's a lot of physical differences in the sport between men and women, I don't think that transgender women should play with women in sports. But there also could be the argument when it comes to like, you know, boys and girls playing with each other up until high school, because really up until high school, boys and girls are relatively the same physically because they haven't hit puberty yet.
Yeah, I would agree. But when it comes to like when I saw this one fight on UFC, it was a man and woman fight. The woman had way better form than the guy did, right? But the guy was just beating her with brute strength. And for me, I found that a bit unethical to put a biological male against biological female. Um, and this happened with this one guy that was a transgender. I mean, transgender female. Went into a women's match, and
Hmm.
he gave this woman
You
a
mean
orbital
she?
fracture. Gave Yeah, she gave this woman a orbital fracture, and I was just stunned because I was like, did no one check what this person was beforehand before they put him in there?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
So
yeah, and then they managed to, and then she got sued basically later.
yeah. So obviously, I think we agree with that when it comes down to it, because there are certain sports like, you know, like esports or whatever. You know, I don't mind if like a transgender individual wants to play with the girls team, like transgender woman wants to play with the girls team. I think that's fine because there's no physical differences. Um, and again, you know, I'm not going to say like males are better at video games than females. There shouldn't be any difference there. So I think that that's totally okay. But when it comes to like physical sports, yeah, I think I'll have a lot of pushback when it comes to that. And I think you do as well. I don't think you're for like when in physical sports, I don't think that you think that transgender individuals, transgender women should play with biological women.
Yeah, and vice versa because I don't know. For me, I think it's a dangerous game you play.
Yeah.
because when it comes down to it, fundamentally speaking, you have different bone structures,
Hmm.
different muscle composition, um, that play a huge factor in it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's a hard topic because it's one of those things we want to accept transgender individuals as normal individuals in society as much as we can. But there are certain aspects that it seems like are being we're stuck on. And this is an aspect where the conservatives are 100% like right on. And that's like, again, we don't want to concede that, but we kind of have to if we want to stay like sane, right?
yeah, I would say so. Um, I think it's rather, I don't know. I think it's you'd have to be disingenuous if you didn't argue not to.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I can make the argument for certain transgender women playing in biological women with biological women in certain sports, but when it comes to like all sports, there's no way I could make that argument.
yeah, same here. I tried one time when I was trying to argue with semantics, and I failed.
Yeah, it's one of those things you just cannot like you're not going to succeed at. You're just not. Like you look at the males have such a big advantage over females when it comes to sports. So it's just one of those topics that it's like, yeah, there's no way you could just say like, oh, a transgender woman playing in a biological woman's sport. It's just probably not going to end well, especially in things like fighting, which you brought up.
Yeah. So, yeah, what's your so you have like a your own little social take on abortion? What do you think about the Roe v. Wade
Yeah, so
issue?
obviously my take on abortion is like totally like on the left because like I've always been like pro-choice. I did a video on the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I thought it was very I didn't like the decision, obviously. But at least I'll read my abortion excerpt from my document here. So, what I say is abortion is one of, if not the most controversial topics in politics. So, I will attempt to be as precise with my language as possible. I am pro choice up until the point of viability, which is described as when the fetus can survive outside the pregnant individuals on its own. I can acknowledge that the life does begin at conception, but as a single celled or unicelled organism. Now, depending on the person, the value put on the single celled organism varies radically. I do not believe the value of a single celled organism supersedes the authority of a pregnant individual's has over their body. So basically, when it comes to like the abortion argument, yes, a single celled organism is technically life, but I don't put a lot of value on a single celled organism because you have single celled organisms like living inside of your gut and also like living on your skin. So it's like that doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. And I don't
Um,
believe that supersedes the authority of a pregnant individual has over their
yeah.
body. So
So, what do you think about the efficacy of maybe like the third trimester?
Again, maybe in certain cases, when it comes to like the woman's health, I would totally be for because that's after the point of viability, obviously, because the point of viability is the first and second trimester. When it comes after that in the third trimester, that's after the point of viability. So if it affects the woman's health, I think that's when obviously a third trimester abortion could happen. But for like practical use, when it comes to like just everyone has it available to them, I don't think it should be available because at a certain point, the point of viability, I think you really are killing a baby at that point because it can live outside the womb. And you've had 6 months to decide at that point because the first and second trimester are 6 months. So if you haven't decided in 6 months, that just seems a little weird to me. Like I would think most women would make the decision by then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that your my positions paper definitely holds. Um,
Hmm.
Hopefully, in the future when people want to debate you, they can attack you on these issues. I
Well,
know it's not
yeah,
complete yet, right? So it's going to be interesting. Maybe we'll do an update episode for when it's complete.
yeah, I was gonna chat with you a little bit too about gender issues. Kind of get
Okay,
your
what do
take
you
on
think?
that and kind of get my
Okay,
take on it.
so what do you think about? So my take on gender issues, personally, Playmore is, um, personally, I believe you can put male, female, non-binary. Um, when it comes to sex, when it comes to gender, I don't know. I'm not like an expert in it, but I guess it's not like what your sex is. So I don't really care too
Yeah.
much about like arguing semantics on that. If you want me to call you whatever you want, if like a person wants me to say their pronouns, whatever the what, I'll say it. I don't
Hmm.
care too much. But what I do have pushback on is when someone makes up a pronoun like, let's just say,
Like a
they're trying to get
neopronoun.
me, yeah, kind of like
Okay.
that, and expect me to actually have to say it 24/7, and then getting mad when I can't pronounce it or I can't remember to say it.
Hmm.
But most of the time, just out of being polite, I will say what they want me to call them. Um, yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, so I was gonna give my take on the gender issue because you know, I I think I'm more of like a centrist when it comes to it, honestly. I was gonna read what I put down. Maybe it'll give more of an idea, but basically this is what I put. I said, I've never really cared about the gender debate. I do not care what people identify with as their gender. The problem presents itself when one's internal identification affects more than just themselves. When individuals are forced to say or address people in certain ways, the problem then becomes an external issue rather than an internal one. I see it as quite selfish to bend and force others' speech to then validate one's internal identity. And then I continued by saying, as for the other side, I think some of the most basic and fundamental levels of respect is respecting others' identity for themselves. This is the case with others' religion, political views, or anything else they identify with. I do ju- I do just that when it comes to this issue. I respect others' identifications and will do my best to use the pronouns that they desire for others to use. Um, so I guess I'm more of just I try to show respect to people, so I will say their pronouns. So maybe I'm a lot more socially liberal on this, as I will say. But I think it is a big problem when people can make up pronouns, which when I say make up, I mean use neo pronouns. I think that's when it becomes a bit of a problem to me because these are words that are not in the English language that now you're saying to people that this is how you have to address me. That's when I see it as like a big problem. But at least for me personally, if people want to use like neo pronouns, I'll still try to use them, but I'd prefer like English pronouns, obviously.
Yeah, same here. Honestly, I don't get why people put so much emphasis with their identity on gender or what their sexuality is.
Well,
To me, that's
the
more nuanced because I judge people by their character rather than
I
what they
I can
would
explain
want to
that.
identify as. Yeah,
I
can
can
you please
explain
explain?
that. Yeah, so when it comes to like sexuality, people identify with the sexuality if they're not straight, right? So you never hear straight people identifying that they're straight or they identify with being straight a lot because that's been the norm for like thousands of years now. When it comes to like being gay or being like lesbian or bisexual, these are all sexualities that, have been shunned upon for, thousands of years in society. And it's only recently in the past like half century is that we've not only recognized them, but now we're starting to accept them. So people very much identify with their sexuality because, again, we live in a more liberal society now that respects people's sexuality and recognizes it. That's also the very important part. And I guess a little bit of a consequence with living in such a liberal society, there's not religion much in society anymore. So these liberal individuals are going to be able to express their sexuality because you really can't do that much in religion. So I don't want to say that is their religion in a way, but that's how they kind of like express it. And I guess that also comes with gender as well, because when it comes to like the gender roles in religion. So if you live in a more traditional society that's more conservative, you're just going to, do what you're told in your gender roles. But obviously, people identify with what gender they're at in a more liberal society because they can express what they want to do, whatever they want to do in their gender and their sexuality. So again, I think it's somewhat like a pseudo religion for a lot of people on the left because they're not religious. But again, that's the best way I've heard it explained to me.
Well, I don't know. Like, when it comes to that, I it makes sense to me. But I grew up in a more conservative household, so my take may not be as
Yeah,
valid to it.
same.
But I was raised to believe in judging a person more on their character and more of like building your character rather than defining it off of those crucial those like off those like I guess identical or identity stuff
I
we call
agree.
gender.
I agree.
And in the ideal world, I feel like we should always judge a person off of said characteristics instead of sexuality and stuff. And that's why I kind of just find it not a practical use of identity when you're just going to use your sexuality or um, thing to build characters. I find it more shallow.
Yeah, and I also had this sort of like, I guess, more controversial take on that because, like, I guess you kind of alluded to you only judge people on character, which I totally agree with. But I really dislike people who come at me and like as soon as I talk to them, they say labels. Which I get that labels are for like conveying information and stuff, like I'm this, I'm that, whatever. I totally agree with that. And if you're in a debate, I think labels are necessary. But if you're in a general conversation and someone just like says instantly, like, oh, they're bisexual or whatever, or they're gay, or oh, they're this gender or whatever, I think that becomes a little weird and it kind of gives me their thought process in a certain way. Because if you're bringing up labels to describe who you are and you're not describing yourself when it comes to like the ideas and your thought process and like what you do in life, that I think is just to me a little weird. It's the same way when it comes to people bringing up their religion. You know, I would like you to show me that you are who you are through your actions, but not, you know, through what you say you are, right?
Well, yeah, true. And it's like there's always so many like things you there's only so many things you can base your character off of. But I don't like it when someone will take that one thing in their like I guess character and run with it. It even being religion, um, or anything else. Like if you've known me for any period of time, I'm very anti that and that subject in particular. Um,
Religion.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm trying to. I don't know. I'm trying to use better wording because I don't want to get canceled.
Well, I
um,
mean, I think the best way of explaining it, you just don't like people idolizing one thing, but like religion,
yeah,
that's kind of what they do in religion. You're supposed to idolize just that religion.
yeah, and I don't like it when someone idolizes a specific thing. It's hard to convey a message like that when I'm just thinking about it now because I've had
Hmm.
this thought for like a long time and I couldn't say it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So would
that's
you
my
say
take on
that,
it.
I mean, would you say the same thing with like when it comes to idolizing anything? Like you shouldn't idolize just one sole thing, even if that thing is like, I don't know, greatness or success or like family or whatever. You should have like balance in your life when it comes to what you idolize.
Yeah, definitely. And
Okay.
when it comes to idolizing one thing, you just get like an unhealthy obsession with it. If
Yeah.
I only idolized even just family, right, I can see that turning into something unhealthy in the long term. If I only idolized sex or other things like that, it could also become an unhealthy obsession. At
Yeah.
the core, at the core of it, everything has to have a balance, in my opinion. Without it, you have a person that is broken, and I've seen this repeat time and time again, especially with my personal life.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think idolizing stuff is super dangerous because it can lead you to dark places.